Ma'am, I don't know who you think you are, but this hotel's for guests with actual reservations, not people wandering in off the street. Avery Thompson's voice sliced through the polished hum of the Sterling Crest Hotel's lobby, her words dripping with a condescension that stopped Serena Caldwell dead in her tracks. The young receptionist, barely glancing up from her tablet, smirked as if she'd just unraveled a con. The air in the Seattle night seemed to thicken, the rain outside hammering the glass doors like a warning. Serena, 42, her dark skin glowing under the chandelier's golden light, stood frozen for a heartbeat, her tailored navy coat still damp from the storm. The weight of Avery's words wasn't just rude, it was a gauntlet thrown down, a challenge to her very existence in this space she'd built with her own hands. Before we dive in, where are you reading from? If you've ever felt unseen or had to prove your worth, this story's for you. Carry your truth boldly. Share it. Own it. And subscribe for more stories that inspire change. The Sterling Crest Hotel was a beacon of luxury in downtown Seattle, its marble floors reflecting the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the restless churn of Puget Sound. The lobby buzzed with the quiet rhythm of wealth. A couple in cashmere raincoats sipped coffee by the bar. A businessman near the fireplace tapped at his laptop, and the faint clink of porcelain cups underscored the elegance. Serena approached the front desk with the confidence of someone who owned the air she breathed, her braided hair, swept into a neat chignon, and her leather boots, polished to a soft sheen, spoke of meticulous care. She was no stranger here. This was her empire. Her name etched into the gold plaque behind the desk, Sterling Crest Hotel, a Caldwell estate. She expected the seamless efficiency her brand demanded, the kind she'd spent 2 decades perfecting. But Avery's words had shattered that expectation like glass. Serena's lips parted slightly, not in shock, but in recognition. She'd heard this tone before, 20 years ago in a Cleveland hotel, mistaken for a maid, a decade ago in Atlanta, dismissed as a junior associate. Each time, she'd had to claw her way past assumptions about what someone like her, a black woman with no loud jewelry or designer purse, could achieve now in her own property. The cycle repeated. "I'm a guest," she said, her voice low but sharp, like a blade sheathed in velvet. "And more than that, I own this hotel." Avery's smirk deepened, her eyes narrowing as if Serena had just claimed to be royalty. "You own the Sterling Crest?" she repeated, her tone laced with disbelief, loud enough to draw glances from the coffee bar. She leaned toward the desk phone, her acrylic nails tapping the counter. "I'm going to have to call the manager." The words landed like a second slap, the lobby's hum faltering as heads turned. The couple in raincoats paused mid-sip, the businessman's fingers froze on his keyboard, and a doorman by the entrance shifted uncomfortably. Serena felt the familiar weight settle over her, not just the doubt, but the unspoken accusation that she didn't belong, that her presence was a disruption to the natural order of this gleaming space. She stood still, her hands clasped, refusing to fill the silence with explanations. Inside, a quiet fire kindled, not from anger, but from the exhaustion of having to prove herself again. She could have pulled out her ID, flashed emails from the board, or shown photos from the ribbon cutting 5 years ago, when she'd stood on this very floor, scissors in hand, smiling for the cameras. Instead, she let the moment hang, her gaze flicking to the gold plaque behind Avery. Her name wasn't just a reservation. It was the foundation of this building, the culmination of a journey that began in a Detroit tenement, where she'd taught herself accounting on a library computer, worked night shifts as a receptionist, and fought for every inch of respect she now commanded. The lobby's atmosphere thickened, the whispers growing bolder. A woman in a cashmere sweater glanced at her phone, lips pursed, as if searching for confirmation of Serena's claim. The businessman tilted his head, his curiosity thinly veiled. Serena didn't flinch, but she felt the eyes on her, the same eyes that had followed her through countless lobbies, boardrooms, and bank offices. They weren't just looking, they were judging, sorting her into a category that didn't match the power she wielded. She'd built 17 hotels from Baltimore to Phoenix, each one a testament to her vision. Luxury made accessible, service made human. Yet here, in her own creation, she was reduced to a stranger. Moments later, Ethan Caldwell, no relation, emerged from a side office, his tie askew, a clipboard clutched like a lifeline. His badge read Assistant Manager, and his forced cheer barely masked his unease. "Good evening," he said, his eyes darting between Serena and Avery. "Is there a problem with your reservation?" His tone was diplomatic, but it carried the same doubt as Avery's, a subtle challenge wrapped in politeness. "She claims to own the hotel," Avery interjected, her voice carrying across the lobby, drawing more eyes. The word claims was a needle, sharp and deliberate, and Serena felt it prick at the edges of her composure. She kept her gaze on Ethan, steady and unyielding. "I don't claim," she said, her voice like polished steel. "I do. My name is Serena Caldwell. You'll find it on every deed, every quarterly report, every executive memo. I'm here for one night. There's a suite reserved under the owner's block." Ethan adjusted his glasses, his hesitation palpable. "Right. Just one moment, please," he muttered into his walkie, retreating to the back, his clipboard a flimsy shield against the growing tension. The lobby's whispers grew louder now, a low hum of speculation. Serena stood rooted, her posture impeccable, refusing to fidget or glance at her phone. She didn't need to perform. She was the truth standing right there. Undeniable if only they'd look. Then security appeared, their presence subtle but pointed. One lingered by the elevators, his arms crossed, while another positioned himself near the coffee bar, his eyes scanning the room. They didn't touch her, didn't speak, but their placement was a silent message, just in case. Serena's chest tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of memory. She remembered a Milwaukee hotel at 28, her first VP role, wearing a suit 2 sizes too big because it was all she could afford. Security had trailed her then, too, until the CFO vouched for her, now. 2 decades later, in a building bearing her name, the same script played out. She could have ended it right there, shown her ID, called up board minutes, or pointed to the plaque. But Serena didn't move. She stepped back, her heels clicking softly on the marble, and pulled out her phone. One call, 25 seconds, no more. "I'm at the Sterling Crest," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "I've been denied access to my own property. Resolve this now." She hung up, her eyes never leaving the desk, where Avery continued typing, as if the screen might rewrite reality itself. The lobby watched, some openly, some pretending not to. The couple by the coffee bar whispered behind their hands. The businessman's laptop now forgotten. Serena stood by a marble pillar, her phone still in hand, her presence a quiet storm gathering strength. She wasn't just fighting for a room, she was fighting for the right to be seen, to be believed, to walk into her own legacy without having to beg for permission. The rain outside pounded harder, the city's pulse echoing her own. This wasn't just about a hotel suite. It was about a truth she'd spent a lifetime proving, and a lesson this lobby was about to learn the hard way. Serena Caldwell stood by the marble pillar in the Sterling Crest Hotel's lobby, her phone still warm from the brief call she'd made. The Seattle rain lashed the windows, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the tension coiling in her chest. The lobby, with its gleaming marble floors and crystal chandeliers, felt like a stage where every glance, every whisper, was a line in a script she knew too well. The couple by the coffee bar had abandoned their drinks, their eyes darting between Serena and the front desk. The businessman near the fireplace closed his laptop, his pretense of work forgotten. Even the doorman, stationed by the glass doors, shifted his weight, his gaze flickering toward her. Serena didn't move, didn't fidget, didn't check her phone. She was a statue of resolve, her tailored navy coat still damp, her braided chignon flawless despite the storm outside. But inside, a quiet fire burned. Not rage, but the bone-deep exhaustion of having to prove her worth in a space she'd built with her own hands. Avery Thompson, the receptionist, continued typing at the front desk, her acrylic nails clicking with a rhythm that felt defiant, as if she could will Serena's claim into falsehood. Her earlier smirk had faded, replaced by a tight-lipped focus, but her posture screamed disbelief. Serena's words, "I own this hotel," hung in the air like a challenge Avery refused to accept. The gold plaque behind her, etched with Sterling Crest Hotel, a Caldwell estate, was a silent rebuke, but Avery's eyes never strayed to it. Instead, she glanced at the security guard by the elevators, a subtle nod that deepened the knot in Serena's stomach. The guard, a broad-shouldered man in a black uniform, adjusted his stance, his presence a wordless threat. Another guard lingered near the coffee bar, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning the room. They weren't aggressive, not yet, but their placement was deliberate, a fence of suspicion closing in around Serena. She felt it, the familiar sting of being watched, judged, reduced to a problem to be managed. The lobby's hum had shifted, the whispers growing bolder. The woman in the cashmere sweater by the coffee bar leaned toward her companion, her voice low but audible. "She said she owns it? Really?" Her tone was a mix of curiosity and doubt, as if Serena's claim was a riddle too absurd to solve. The businessman, now openly staring, tilted his head, his expression caught between intrigue and skepticism. Serena's gaze remained fixed on the front desk, but she sensed every pair of eyes, every hushed word, like pinpricks on her skin. She'd been here before, too many times. At 28, in a Milwaukee hotel. Security had trailed her through the lobby because her blazer didn't scream executive. At 35, in a Dallas boardroom, a banker had asked if she was there to take notes. Each time, she'd swallowed the humiliation, turned it into fuel, and kept climbing. Now, at 42, standing in her own hotel, the weight of those moments pressed down, heavy but familiar. She'd built 17 properties across the country, each one a defiance of the world's low expectations. Yet here, in her own lobby, she was still a stranger. Ethan Caldwell, the assistant manager, reappeared from the side office, his tie still askew, his clipboard clutched like a shield. His badge glinted under the chandelier light. The words, assistant manager, a flimsy claim to authority. He glanced at Serena, then at Avery, his forced cheer fraying at the edges. "Miss, good evening," he stammered, his voice too loud for the hushed lobby. "Is there a mix-up with your reservation?" The question was a lifeline, a way to reduce Serena's claim to a clerical error. He didn't meet her eyes, his gaze skittering to the floor, the desk, anywhere but her face. "She claims to own the hotel," Avery interjected, her voice carrying a sharp edge. The word claims, a deliberate jab. She leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed, as if daring Serena to escalate. The lobby's whispers spiked, a low buzz of speculation. The couple by the coffee bar exchanged glances, the woman's eyebrows raised. The businessman leaned forward, his curiosity now unmasked. Serena felt the room tilt, the air growing thick with judgment. She kept her hands clasped, her posture impeccable. But inside, the fire flared, not because they doubted her. Doubt was old news, but because they thought she didn't belong, that her presence was a glitch in their polished world. "I don't claim," Serena said, her voice like polished steel, each word measured and precise. "I do. My name is Serena Caldwell. You'll find it on every deed, every quarterly report, every executive memo. I'm here for one night. There's a suite reserved under the owner's block." Her gaze locked onto Ethan's, unyielding, a challenge he couldn't dodge. His glasses slipped slightly, and he pushed them up, his hesitation a crack in his facade. "Right. Just one moment, please," he muttered, turning to his walkie-talkie. His voice was low, but Serena caught the words. "We might have a situation." He retreated to the back, his clipboard a flimsy excuse, leaving Avery to hold the line. The security guard shifted, the one by the elevators taking a step closer, his eyes narrowing. The other, near the coffee bar, unclasped his hands, his posture alert. They didn't speak, didn't need to. Their presence was message enough. Serena's chest tightened, a memory surfacing, a hotel in Cleveland, her first VP role. When security had followed her to the elevator because she didn't look right. She'd been younger then, less sure, her hands shaking as she'd called her boss to vouch for her. Now, she was the boss, the owner, the one who signed the checks. Yet the script hadn't changed. She could have ended it. Pulled out her ID, shown emails from the board, or pointed to the plaque. But that would have been too easy. A concession to their doubt. Serena didn't concede. The lobby's tension was a living thing now, pulsing through every glance, every whisper. The woman in the cashmere sweater pulled out her phone, her fingers tapping as if searching for proof. The businessman's stare was unabashed, his lips pursed in thought. The doorman, still by the entrance, looked away, his discomfort palpable. Serena stood by the pillar, her phone in hand, her call already made. She didn't pace, didn't sigh, didn't glance at the time. She was a storm held in check, her calm a weapon sharper than any outburst. Avery, sensing the shift, stopped typing, her eyes flicking to the security guard by the elevators. She leaned forward, her voice low but audible. "This is getting ridiculous." The words were meant for Ethan, but they landed on Serena, a final spark on dry tinder. Serena's gaze didn't waver. She felt the weight of every moment that had led her here. From the Detroit tenement where she'd studied by flashlight, to the night shifts as a receptionist, to the bank in Minnesota that had laughed at her loan application. She'd built this hotel, this brand, because she was tired of being invisible, tired of being a shadow in spaces she deserved to command. Now, in her own lobby, that fight was hers again. The rain outside pounded harder, the city's pulse echoing her own. She wasn't just waiting for Ethan's return or the guards to stand down. She was waiting for the truth to break through, for the lesson to land, for the world to see her as she was. Not a claim, but a certainty. Serena Caldwell stood resolute by the marble pillar, her navy coat a silent armor, her braided chignon a crown of precision. The Sterling Crest Hotel's lobby pulsed with unspoken tension, the air thick with the weight of eyes and whispers. Avery Thompson, behind the front desk, had abandoned her tablet, her acrylic nails no longer tapping but frozen mid-air, her earlier defiance now a flicker of uncertainty. The security guards, one by the elevators, the other near the coffee bar, held their posts, their presence a lingering challenge, though their gazes wavered. Ethan Caldwell, the assistant manager, had vanished into the back office, his walkie-talkie crackling with muffled urgency. Serena's phone, still in her hand, was a quiet testament to the call she'd made. 25 seconds that had set a reckoning in motion. She didn't shift her weight, didn't glance at the onlookers. Her calm was a blade, sharp and unwavering, cutting through the room's doubt. The elevator dinged, a sharp note that sliced the lobby's hum. Marcus Vaughn, regional vice president, stepped out, his gray suit crisp, his clipboard a prop of authority. His stride was purposeful, his jaw tight. A man who knew a storm was brewing and his job was to contain it. Behind him, Lila Torres, district manager, emerged in a company fleece, her dark eyes scanning the room with a mix of urgency and resolve. Their arrival shifted the lobby's gravity. Heads turned, whispers faltered, and the security guards straightened. Sensing a change in the script, Marcus's gaze locked onto Serena, a flicker of recognition softening his expression, though his voice carried the clipped professionalism of a crisis manager. "Miss Caldwell," he said, nodding sharply. "We are so sorry for this misunderstanding." Lila followed, her tablet glowing with data, her voice breathless but firm. "We're resolving this immediately." Serena's eyes met Marcus's, then Lila's, her expression unyielding but not cold. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said, her voice low, each word deliberate. "It's a failure. I'm here for my suite, and I expect it now. But this—" She gestured subtly to the desk, the guards, the staring guests. "This needs more than a key card." Marcus nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line, while Lila tapped her tablet, already pulling up records. The lobby's onlookers, the couple by the coffee bar, the businessman near the fireplace, leaned in, their curiosity now tinged with unease. Avery's face paled, her hands dropping to her lap, the weight of her earlier words. "I don't know who you think you are." Now a noose tightening around her. Ethan reappeared, his clipboard trembling slightly in his hands, his tie still askew. "Miss Caldwell," he began, his voice cracking. "I've checked the system. There's a suite in the owner's block, as you said. It's ready." His attempt at recovery was feeble, his eyes darting to Marcus for salvation. Serena didn't acknowledge him. Her gaze remained on Marcus, the man who'd worked under her for a decade, who knew her journey from a Detroit tenement to the helm of 17 hotels. "The suite is a start," she said, "but I want a full report on why this happened, who was trained, who wasn't, and why my own staff looked at me like I was a fraud." Marcus cleared his throat, his clipboard now a useless shield. "We've issued a site-wide alert," he said, his tone professional but strained. "The suite on the 15th floor is cleared. Key cards are ready. Your usual order. Fresh fruit tray, espresso. We'll be waiting. The driver's been rerouted for your morning needs." Lila chimed in, her voice steadier. "We're pulling personnel files now. There'll be an incident report by the time you're settled." Serena nodded once, her expression unreadable. "Good," she said. "And I want a meeting tomorrow morning. Everyone involved. Ethan, Avery, HR, no exceptions." The security guards, sensing the shift, stepped back, their postures softening. The one by the elevators uncrossed his arms. The other near the coffee bar busied himself with a non-existent task. The lobby's tension redirected, the whispers now aimed at the staff, not Serena. The couple by the coffee bar resumed their drinks, though their glances lingered. The businessman opened his laptop again, but his focus was gone, his eyes flicking to Serena as if seeing her for the first time. She didn't gloat, didn't fold her arms or raise her chin in triumph. Her victory was in her stillness, in the way she held the room without needing to shout. Marcus turned to Ethan, his voice low but sharp. "Get the key cards. Now!" Ethan scrambled to the desk, his hands fumbling as he printed them. Avery, silent now, stared at her screen. Her earlier bravado dissolved. Serena watched them, her eyes catching every detail. The sweat on Ethan's brow, the way Avery's fingers twitched, the subtle panic in Marcus's clipped movements. She wasn't just observing a mistake, she was witnessing power realigning. the moment when doubt began to crack under the weight of truth. Lila approached, her tablet now closed, her expression a mix of apology and determination. "Miss Caldwell, we'll make this right," she said. "Not just tonight, but across the board." Serena's gaze softened, but only slightly. "I'm not here for promises," she said. "I'm here for change. This hotel, this brand, was built on respect. For every guest, every story. If my own staff can't see that in me, what does that say about the rest?" Lila nodded, her jaw tight, while Marcus scribbled something on his clipboard, his face a mask of focus. Serena took a step toward the desk, her heels clicking softly on the marble. "I'll take the key cards," she said, her voice even. "And I want someone to confirm the suite is clean, no shortcuts." Ethan handed her the cards, his hands unsteady, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's done. Miss Caldwell, I'll send housekeeping up immediately." Serena took the cards, her fingers brushing the cool plastic, her eyes never leaving his. She didn't need to say more. The weight of her presence was enough. Marcus stepped forward, his tone now softer. "We've notified corporate. An audit team is on standby, and we're scheduling recertification for all staff on guest protocol. Disciplinary actions start tonight." Serena nodded, her expression unchanged. "Make sure it's thorough," she said. "And I want to speak to Avery tomorrow, privately, with HR present." Avery's head snapped up, her eyes wide, the reality of her mistake crashing down. Serena didn't look at her. Not yet. This wasn't about punishment. It was about accountability, about forcing a reckoning that went beyond apologies. She turned toward the elevators, the key cards in hand, her steps slow and deliberate. The lobby watched, some guests whispering, others silent, their earlier skepticism now tinged with awe. The security guards melted into the background, their purpose dissolved. Marcus and Lila exchanged a glance, their faces a mix of relief and dread. They knew this wasn't just about a room, it was about a failure that had exposed a deeper flaw, one Serena would not let fester. As the elevator doors opened, Serena stepped inside, her posture unchanged, her fire still burning beneath her calm. The doors closed, sealing her from the lobby's gaze, but the truth she carried lingered, a force that would ripple through the hotel long after she was gone. She wasn't just reclaiming her suite, she was reclaiming her story, her legacy, and the right to be seen without explanation. The lesson was only beginning, and she would make sure it landed, hard and unforgettable. Serena Caldwell sat across from Avery Thompson in the staff lounge of the Sterling Crest Hotel, the hum of a fridge and the faint buzz of overhead lights filling the quiet space. The narrow table between them held a half-eaten blueberry muffin and a paper cup, its contents long cold. Serena's navy coat was draped over the chair's back, her ivory blouse crisp despite the long night. Her braided chignon remained flawless, a testament to her unyielding composure. Avery, her name tag slightly crooked, sat stiffly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her earlier bravado replaced by a nervous flush. The lounge was empty, the rest of the staff wisely giving them space, and the air carried a weight that demanded honesty. Serena leaned forward slightly, her eyes steady but not harsh, her voice low and deliberate. "Have you ever worked somewhere that made you feel small?" she asked. The question simple but piercing. Avery blinked, her lips parting as if caught off guard. She hesitated, her fingers twitching, then nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said, her voice rough, barely above a whisper. "Most of the time." Serena tilted her head, inviting more. Avery swallowed, her gaze dropping to the table. "I worked at a diner off I-90 for a year. Paper hat, greasy apron, the works. Cooks yelled at me every shift. Called me kid even though I was 25. Customers barely looked at me. Some didn't tip. Some snapped their fingers like I was a dog. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter. Her voice cracked, and she bit her lip, her eyes flicking to Serena, then away. Serena nodded, her expression softening but not wavering. "So you know what it's like to be dismissed," she said. "To walk into a room and feel like you're not even there." Avery nodded again, her hands unclenching slightly. Serena leaned back, her posture relaxed but her presence commanding. "Then tell me, Avery, why did you look at me last night and decide I didn't belong here?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was raw, stripped of pretense, a mirror held up to Avery's actions. The younger woman's face flushed deeper, her eyes darting to the muffin, the cup, anywhere but Serena's gaze. The silence stretched, heavy with guilt, until Avery finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I don't know. I didn't mean to. When you walked in, I thought you were lost, or maybe waiting for someone else. You didn't look like—" She stopped, her words catching in her throat. "Didn't look like what?" Serena pressed, her tone calm but unrelenting. "Like the kind of person who owns hotels?" Avery's shoulders slumped, her silence an admission. Serena let the moment hang, her eyes never leaving Avery's face. "That's the problem," she continued. "People carry a picture in their head, clean cut, probably male, probably older, definitely not me. That picture doesn't just sit there. It shapes how you move, how you decide, how you treat people. Last night, you saw me through that picture, and you chose to doubt me." Avery's eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. I wasn't trying to—" She trailed off, her hands twisting in her lap. Serena's gaze softened, but she didn't let the apology slide. "I'm not here for sorry," she said. "I'm here for you to see me, not as your boss, not as a warning, but as a person. I was you once. Avery. I started as a receptionist in a hotel in St. Paul. Got mistaken for a janitor, called sweetheart by guests who didn't bother learning my name. My first boss said I sounded too educated for the front desk and stuck me on night audit. Every shift, I had to choose, fight or let it go. I fought, not with shouting, but by building something no one could ignore." Avery's eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. "You really started like that?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Serena smiled, a small, wry curve of her lips. "Hard to imagine, isn't it? But it's not supposed to be rare. It should be normal. People like me, like you, getting a chance to rise. I built this brand, 17 hotels, because I was tired of being a shadow. I wanted places where everyone, old, young, dressed up or not, gets treated with dignity. So why, in my own lobby? Am I still invisible?" The question landed like a stone, and Avery flinched, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "I didn't know," she said, her voice breaking. I assumed you were someone else. I'm really sorry." Serena leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Avery's. "It's a start," she said. "But apologies don't fix systems. They don't change the pictures in people's heads. You need to do more than feel bad. You need to be aware. Every guest who walks through that door deserves the same respect you'd give someone in a three-piece suit. Start there. And you won't have to recover from nights like last night." Avery nodded, her eyes glistening but her jaw set, as if the weight of Serena's words was settling into place. "I get it," she said, her voice steadier now. "I want to do better. I mean it." Serena studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity, and found it in the younger woman's earnest gaze. "Good," she said, standing slowly, her movements deliberate. "This isn't about perfection, it's about intention. Keep that, and you'll grow." She picked up her coat, draping it over her arm, and turned toward the door. "Thank you for talking to me," Avery called after her, her voice small but genuine. Serena paused, glancing back with a nod, then stepped out, leaving Avery to sit with the truth. The lounge door closed behind her, and Serena felt a shift, not just in Avery, but in herself. The conversation hadn't erased the sting of the previous night, but it had carved a path forward, a crack in the armor of assumption. She wasn't naive. She knew one talk wouldn't undo years of bias, but it was a seed, one she'd plant again and again, in every hotel, every lobby, every heart that needed to learn. The lesson was taking root, and she would nurture it until it grew undeniable. Serena Caldwell stood at the head of the small executive conference room in the Sterling Crest Hotel. Her arms folded, her charcoal suit crisp against the ivory blouse beneath. Her braided chignon was as impeccable as ever, a silent declaration of her unyielding presence. Across the table, Marcus Vaughn, the regional vice president, clutched his clipboard, his gray suit slightly creased from a sleepless night. Lila Torres, the district manager, sat beside him, her tablet glowing with notes, her company fleece a stark contrast to the room's polished formality. Ethan Caldwell, the assistant manager, fidgeted with his tie, his badge glinting faintly under the fluorescent lights. Avery Thompson, the receptionist, sat stiffly, her hands clasped tightly, her name tag now perfectly aligned. Elena Ruiz, the HR representative from corporate, held an open notepad, her pen poised but still. The air was dense with anticipation, every pair of eyes fixed on Serena, waiting for her to set the tone. She didn't sit. Her presence filled the room, a quiet force that demanded accountability without a raised voice. "This isn't about punishment," she began, her voice steady, each word a deliberate step. "It's about prevention. Last night exposed a flaw, not just in one person, but in the system we've built. If my own staff can't recognize me, can't trust my word, what does that say about how we treat every guest who walks through our doors?" Her gaze swept the table, lingering on Avery's flushed face, Ethan's averted eyes, and Marcus's tense jaw. No one spoke, the silence a canvas for her to paint the path forward. Marcus shifted, his clipboard a flimsy shield. "We've drafted a memo," he said, his tone professional but strained. "It's going out to all 17 properties today. Mandatory inclusivity training, no exceptions. With a focus on guest recognition and bias awareness." Lila nodded, tapping her tablet. "We're also revising the onboarding process," she added. "New hires will face scenario-based training, real situations, not just checklists. We're adding empathy assessments to catch blind spots early." Serena's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing their intent. "That's a start," she said. "But training isn't enough if it's just a box to check. I want people to understand what respect looks like when they think no one's watching." Elena, the HR representative, scribbled a note, her expression focused but cautious. "We're prepared to implement disciplinary measures," she said, glancing at Avery and Ethan. "A formal write-up for Avery, removal from front desk duties until recertification. Ethan's on administrative review pending further interviews." Serena raised a hand, her movement subtle but commanding. "Discipline is necessary," she said, "but it's not the goal. I want learning, not fear. Avery's already spoken with me. She's got a chance to grow. Ethan, you need to step up or step aside. Leadership isn't about hiding behind a clipboard." Ethan's face reddened, his fingers tightening on his tie. "I understand. Miss Caldwell," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. Avery's eyes flicked up, meeting Serena's for a fleeting moment, a mix of gratitude and resolve in her gaze. Serena didn't soften, but her tone carried a thread of encouragement. "This isn't about tearing anyone down," she said. "It's about building something better. Every guest deserves dignity, old, young, in a suit or sweatshirt. That's the brand I created, and it's the one I expect you to uphold." Marcus cleared his throat, his clipboard now resting on the table. "We're setting up a task force," he said. "Corporates on board to audit guest interaction protocols across all properties. We'll have a report by next quarter." Lila leaned forward, her voice earnest. "And we're pulling guest feedback from the last year, real stories, not just survey scores. We'll use them to train staff on what inclusion actually feels like." Serena nodded, her expression unreadable but approving. "Good," she said, "but I want more than reports. I want change you can see, feel, measure. I want staff who don't just follow rules but believe in them." She paused, her gaze settling on Avery, who sat straighter now, her hands still but her eyes attentive. "Avery, you're new. 5 months, right?" Avery nodded, her voice soft. "Yes, ma'am." Serena's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Drop the ma'am. This isn't formal. You're here because I see potential, not just a mistake, but potential doesn't mean much without action. You'll go through the training. But I want you to lead by example. Show me you've learned." Avery's eyes widened, a spark of determination igniting. "I will," she said, her voice steadier now. "I promise." Serena turned to Ethan, her gaze sharper. "And you, Ethan, you're not new. You've got a title, a clipboard, a team. Last night, you didn't lead, you followed. That can't happen again. If you want to stay in that chair, show me you can make decisions, not excuses." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his eyes meeting hers for the first time. "Understood," he said, his voice low but firm. Serena held his gaze a moment longer, then shifted to Marcus and Lila. "This isn't just about one hotel," she said. "It's about every property, every guest, every interaction. I'm holding you accountable to make it real." Elena spoke up, her pen tapping lightly on her notepad. "We're drafting a new evaluation system," she said. "It'll include peer reviews and guest interaction metrics. With a focus on empathy and accountability, we'll roll it out next month." Serena nodded, her arms unfolding as she leaned forward, her hands resting on the table. "Make it human," she said. "No buzzwords, no scripts. I want staff reading real stories, guests who felt ignored, dismissed, or unseen. Let them feel the weight of those moments. That's how you change minds." Marcus scribbled a note, his face a mask of focus. "We'll have the training live by next Friday," he said. "Story modules included, as you said. Real words, human ones," Lila added. "We're also setting up a feedback loop. Staff can report issues anonymously, so we catch problems before they escalate." Serena's eyes softened, a flicker of approval crossing her face. "That's what I want," she said. "A system that listens, not just reacts. But there's one more thing." She straightened, her presence filling the room again. "Starting next quarter, I'm joining the rotation. I'll visit properties unannounced, as a guest, not a CEO. No warnings, no fanfare. I want to see what happens when no one knows it's me." Marcus raised an eyebrow, a rare crack in his composure. "A secret guest?" he asked. Serena's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not secret. Anonymous until I'm not. If that makes people nervous." "Good. Let them sit in it. The real work of this job doesn't come with a heads up." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Avery's hands relaxed, her eyes bright with a new understanding. Ethan's shoulders squared, as if bracing for the challenge. Marcus and Lila exchanged a glance, their resolve hardening. Elena's pen moved faster, capturing every directive. Serena stepped back, her hands folding again, her mission clear. She wasn't just fixing a mistake, she was reshaping a culture, one interaction at a time. The seed she'd planted was growing, and she would ensure it took root, deep and unshakable. Serena Caldwell stepped out of the executive conference room in the Sterling Crest Hotel, her charcoal suit as crisp as when she'd entered, her ivory blouse a quiet contrast to the fire in her eyes. Her heels clicked softly on the lobby's marble floor, each step a deliberate echo of her presence. The space, still humming with the morning's activity, seemed to pause as she appeared. Guests wheeled their bags toward the checkout desk. Staff moved with practiced efficiency, but all eyes, subtle or overt, followed her. Marcus Vaughn and Lila Torres trailed behind, their folders and tablets clutched tightly, their faces marked by the weight of the meeting they'd just left. Ethan Caldwell, the assistant manager, lingered near the concierge desk, his tie finally straightened, his expression a mix of chastened resolve and lingering nerves. Avery Thompson, now back at the front desk, glanced up briefly, her hands steady as she handed a keycard to a guest, a flicker of determination in her gaze. Serena didn't acknowledge the stares or the nods. She was focused, her mind already mapping the path ahead, her heart carrying a message that went beyond the walls of this hotel. She moved toward the elevators, her posture unyielding, her braided chignon a crown of precision. The lobby's rhythm resumed, but it felt different, as if her presence had left an invisible mark. A new receptionist, a young man with a bright smile, nodded respectfully as she passed, his demeanor a stark contrast to the night before. Serena returned the nod, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp, taking in every detail, the way he stood, the sincerity in his greeting, the absence of doubt in his gaze. It was a small sign, but a sign nonetheless, that the lesson was beginning to take hold. She pressed the elevator button, the doors opening with a soft chime, and stepped inside. As the doors closed, she caught a final glimpse of Avery, who was now assisting a guest with a quiet focus, her earlier hesitation replaced by something steadier. Serena's lips curved into the faintest smile, not of satisfaction, but of possibility. In the suite on the 15th floor, Serena packed her bag with the same precision she brought to everything. Her laptop was secured, its charger neatly coiled, her navy coat folded over her arm. The room smelled of lemon and eucalyptus, the fruit tray untouched, the espresso machine cold beside a handwritten note with her initials. Rushed, but earnest. She walked through the space slowly, her eyes scanning not just for cleanliness but for intention, for proof that someone, somewhere, still cared about the experience she'd built. This hotel wasn't just a business, it was her story, forged in the crucible of doubt and defiance. At 33, she'd pitched to a Minnesota bank that scoffed at her vision, offering terms that dared her to fail. She'd succeeded, building 17 properties that stood as monuments to her will. Yet, even here, she'd had to prove herself again. The weight of that truth settled over her, not as anger, but as clarity. Her phone buzzed, a message from her assistant, everything in motion, media statement ready if you want it. Serena paused, her fingers hovering over the screen. She could have made this public. A single post would have sparked a firestorm, headlines writing themselves. But that wasn't her goal. This wasn't about rage or revenge. It was about respect, about dismantling the assumptions that had made her invisible in her own lobby. She typed a quick reply. No statement. Focus on the training rollout. She set the phone down, her gaze lingering on a small note on the nightstand. Written in careful handwriting, Miss Caldwell, thank you for your grace. I'll be better. Avery. It wasn't polished, just lined paper and ink, but it carried more weight than a corporate apology. Serena folded it and slipped it into her purse. A reminder that change, however small, was possible. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded, her silence a space for reflection. The lesson she'd begun wasn't just for Avery, Ethan, or the staff. It was for anyone who'd ever stood in a room and felt their worth questioned, their presence doubted. She thought of herself at 20, a receptionist in St. Paul, her dreams bigger than the cheap flats she wore, her ambition a fire no one could see. She'd carried that fire through every dismissal, every sideways glance, every moment she'd had to explain her right to be there. Now, as CEO, she carried it still, not as bitterness, but as memory, a tool sharper than any weapon. Memory had built her empire, and memory would guide its future. Serena stood, her movements deliberate, and walked to the mirror. She met her own gaze, unflinching, seeing not just the woman in the charcoal suit, but the girl who'd studied by flashlight, the young woman who'd fought for every inch of respect. She didn't need the world's permission to know who she was. She never had. But she would make sure the world saw her, not as a claim, but as a certainty. That was the message she carried, not just for herself, but for anyone who'd ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told they didn't belong. You don't shout to be heard. You walk with the weight of your truth, and you let it speak for itself. She grabbed her bag and headed for the elevator, her heels soft against the carpet. The doors opened, and she stepped out into the lobby one last time. The space was alive now, guests checking out, staff moving with purpose. Marcus and Lila stood near the fireplace, their heads bent over a tablet, their voices low but urgent. Ethan was at the concierge desk, reviewing a file with a focus he hadn't shown before. Avery, at the front desk, caught Serena's eye and offered a small nod, her hands steady as she handed a guest their receipt. Serena returned the nod, her expression unreadable but her heart lighter. The cracks in old habits were forming, small but real. And that was where change began, not with grand gestures, but with quiet corrections, repeated until they held. As she walked toward the exit, the doorman opened the door with a warm smile. "Safe travels, Miss Caldwell," he said, his voice genuine. "We hope to see you again." Serena paused, her eyes meeting his. "You will," she said, her voice even but certain. She stepped out, her bag in hand, her mission clear. The lesson she'd started wasn't finished. It would ripple through every property, every interaction, every heart she touched, for those who'd ever had to prove their worth. Her message was simple. Know who you are, walk like it, and let the world catch up. They would learn, one way or another, and she would be there to make sure they did.